Would roaming around a museum alone, if you're blind, be enjoyable? Well, I'll tell you about my experience recently at the Penn Museum, and I've got a couple of updates on this one-year anniversary of the iCantCU podcast.
From Studio C, welcome to the iCantCU podcast with David. He can't see, but he's got a lot to say and a face for radio.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 51 of the iCantCU podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials, Twitter being my social of choice, but watch out for Instagram too, especially if you like seeing selfies of me, because that seems to be what I post most often, as I like to call them, blind selfies, and I'm always so excited when I actually take something that looks pretty good. So keep an eye there as well. As I mentioned in the intro, it is the one-year anniversary. 1 year ago today, as I'm recording this on December 4th, 2019, 1 year ago today, I had 5 podcasts that went live on Apple Podcast and some other places. And since then, we've grown. We're now on YouTube and iHeartRadio and a couple other places that I'm forgetting. But you can find our podcast, the iCantCU podcast, wherever you usually get podcasts. My next goal is to get us on the Amazon Echo devices and the Google Home devices, and we'll see how that goes over the next, hopefully sometime, maybe even before the end of the year. Although time is running out there. But obviously I will make an announcement once that happens. But as I also mentioned in the intro, I've got a couple of updates, and I want to get to those first before I dig into the main part of the show this time. And last episode I had David Cleveland on, and I really hope that my poor showing in the Blind Abilities Fantasy Football League did not rub off on him by him appearing on last week's podcast, because he got beat, and then someone who didn't look like they would win, another team that was 7-5 like him, won, so he didn't make the playoffs. And I hope I didn't jinx him. And if I did, David, I'm sorry. But I do appreciate you coming on the podcast last week. And if you haven't checked that out, that's episode 50 of the iCantCU podcast, and it is about the Blind Abilities Fantasy Football League, 12 blind people who play fantasy football, and it was very competitive this year. Well, I mean, I wasn't very competitive, but most of the teams were. But we all had a lot of fun, and the playoffs get going this week. I, of course, am not in them because I have 1 win and 12 losses, so that's how it went for me. So another update I have, is my mom, and I know I've talked about her quite often, and she's on my mind all the time because she still is in hospice. Most of the time she's in a lot of pain, and it's just sad. And so I've been going out to see her as much as possible. Now, the one issue that we've had, the place where she is, it's a place called Rose Court. It's part of the Maris Grove development out in Glen Mills. They've had, over the course of 2019, 2 or 3, and this maybe even 4 times when the building there, the Rose Court, has been quarantined, where you can't go in and visit anyone there. It was in quarantine when my mom turned 90 back in April. Now, at that time, she was still able to be somewhat mobile, so they were able to bring her down to a common area for us to, celebrate her 90th birthday. And, because she didn't have any symptoms. If she had any kind of symptoms of whatever's going around these different times, I'm guessing they wouldn't have brought her down. So it's made things a little bit tricky to get in to see her. Now, when we moved her in there a couple of years ago, or almost a couple of years now, they told us there were no restrictions. We could come whenever we wanted. And they kind of look at us funny when we go and ask to go in when it's in quarantine. We've done it twice. We did it once over the Thanksgiving holiday. We went, I think we went on Friday after Thanksgiving to visit her while Jane was home. Jane got to visit with my mom, and we spent a little bit of time with her. We didn't go back the rest of the weekend. Saturday, we didn't go back, and then Sunday we took Jane back to New York in the sleet and snow of that day. And Monday, we didn't have time. I had a presentation to go out. So Tuesday, we went out there. And again, they, kind of look at us a little funny when we come to visit, when the building is in quarantine and there's really no one else going in and out other than people that work there. And so I'm just curious, if you're out there listening, if you know of any kind of healthcare facility similar to this that would be quarantined where you can't go and visit. Obviously, a place, any hospice that's specifically hospice, I'm sure it's not a big deal because, it is, folks at the end of their lives that are in there. And but this is more than that. This facility is assisted living and skilled nursing and things like that. So there are long-term residents there. There are also people who are there that are, doing rehab and things like that and need skilled nursing just, for a month or two or whatever it is. My mom, like I said, moved in January of 2018 and, for the assisted living portion there. So it's just made things a little frustrating. And again, as I mentioned in previous episodes, my mom is very close to the end. And, it's weighing on us, to battle to go out there. And, at some point, I'm just hoping they don't say, no, you can't go and visit. But if you are any kind of healthcare provider, if you've ever heard of a situation like that, please let me know. You can leave a voicemail at 646-926-6350, or just shoot me an email at iCantCUpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, iCantCU is only 7 letters, iCantCU podcast@gmail.com. And I appreciate any input you could give me on that. Okay, so let's get into the bulk of today's episode, which was the Penn Museum. And I know I've talked about the Penn Museum on a couple of occasions. A few times a year, they do these tactile days, and pardon my voice, I can hear it's cutting out a little bit. I do have a little bit of a head cold, so I do apologize for that. But they have these tactile days, and what that means for folks who are blind and visually impaired, it means that you can feel things that you necessarily might not be able to normally just go up and touch. In Philadelphia, there's a great museum we used to take the kids to called the Please Touch Museum, and they always had a great time going there when they were little, and obviously with my kids in their mid-20s now, it wasn't yesterday we were going there. But at the Penn Museum Tactile Days, there are both exhibits that are standard exhibits, like they have this great Egypt gallery there that just has so many cool things in it, and we've been there a few times, and able to feel the hieroglyphics and things like that. One of the things we did recently when we were there at the museum, and I'll post and if you follow me on Instagram, I think I've already posted this picture, but I did a selfie in front of this mosaic that was found on the floor of a place in Italy. It's around 2,000 years old, and it's this very cool mosaic. And as Jean from the Penn Museum had pointed out, the story was used to base the Hunger Games. It's the story that was based. That the Hunger Games was based on, basically what is depicted in this mosaic, and it is just incredible feeling each little tiny piece of, I'm guessing it's cement because it's not tile. Each little piece that they had to work with to make it look as it does, and it depicts people on a boat with a little sail, and I believe there are oars. I can't remember, but I'll post that on the show notes page, and you can take a look there. And but I got there early. This was an event that Liz was not going to go to. She had some other things going on, and I always feel bad when I have Liz take me somewhere. And again, this is in Philadelphia. We live in the suburbs. Anything into Philadelphia for us is probably at least an hour round trip. And there are things locally that are that, going out to my mom's is usually a half an hour each way. So I get it that it's, and I hate to make someone drive to and from twice. For example, Margaret sometimes will take me out to my mom's. That's my sister-in-law, Liz's sister. She'll take me out there, and she said, "Well, I could pick you up." And that's 2 hours of a day that's shot. Just driving, me out and picking me up and bringing me home. So I don't ask her to I get a ride out there, and I either Uber home or I go out at a time that I know Liz will get done, and she can come in and visit my mom, and then I go home with her. I've talked to my friend Ken, who is in town from New Orleans, and he's offered to also to drive. So and it's greatly appreciated. And I know I know it's a pain in the butt. But there's not an easy way for mass transit to get out to my mom's. However, going to the Penn Museum, very easy for me. As I've mentioned on just about every podcast episode, I live about a mile from the Swarthmore train station. So I could either take the bus to the train, or in this case, on this day, Liz took me to the train. I got on the train. I got off at the University City stop, and it is literally right around the corner from the Penn Museum, maybe a 5-minute walk. It's very close, and it was awesome to be able to do that. And I was very excited to do that on my own and get there. And the Tactile Day is also part of something that is in conjunction with Philly Touch Tours. And I know I've mentioned that before on the podcast. Philly Touch Tours does all sorts of great things for blind and visually impaired folks to, do events where, you can go and do more than just, like I keep harping on the zoo, basically doing more than just walk around and have someone read, what we're supposedly seeing. That being said, so I got to the museum well before the program started. The program was supposed to start at noon, and I opted to take the train in to the museum as opposed to taking the train to where our Keystone chapter normally meets and riding in together on a bus with everyone else. I just couldn't see, spending that extra hour waiting and then riding around on the bus instead of just getting off of the train right at the museum. And by doing so, I had to pay for my admission again, which $7 that day for me was much better than spending an extra hour just riding around doing nothing. But I thought, what am I going to do? I'm here an hour before everything starts. And so when I went in and I paid my money, and the person at the desk said to me, "Okay, well, let me find Kevin. Kevin Schott is the one who coordinates the stuff with the museum. He works at the museum. Trish and he coordinate everything, it seems. And Kevin is awesome as far as setting everything up. He's come to our chapter meetings, at least one of them, and brought stuff with us at our normal location, as well as popping into our chapter meeting when we had it there at the museum back over the spring or summer, whenever we were there last. And so I spoke with him briefly, and I asked him if it was okay to just wander around. And I thought, well, what am I going to do just wandering around? I don't know where anything is in this place. Most times when I've been there, and I say most times, I've only been there 2 other times recently. I was there as a kid. But the last couple of times I was there, Liz was with us, and I've been there with with others. And so here I am on my own, and I figure, okay, well, what am I going to do? Let me just wander around. Kevin told me it was okay to wander. And I thought, well, how am I going to know what I'm looking at? And things like that. So I thought, well, I hear something playing a video playing down the one hallway. So I thought, let me go see what that is. And it had to do with Jamaica, and it was an exhibit on Jamaica and things that happened. I want to say back in the 70s. I can't remember. I didn't stay for a big chunk of it. 5 minutes or so listening to this video. And then I wandered around, and there were some other exhibits, and I can't remember the name, but I'd asked Kevin, and it was about this. I don't want to call civilization, but there were these cities along the Mississippi River that were there before the Spanish had come into the U.S., or what is now the U.S., and they just saw these cities, and they didn't really document it well, but most of the cities by that point, all the people had died off. And I want to say he called them Mississippians. I don't remember, but they go back to, again, they preceded the Spanish coming to the quote unquote New World. So I looked at some of those things and some of the things that they found in these cities that were, Kevin had told me later that had been wiped out by disease. And I had never known of that, and I just thought that was kind of neat. And there were also some Native American things on this main floor. One was a little town, a little almost like a model, I guess, of this little Native American town or village that was constructed by a Native American to mimic, I guess, the place that he lived or was from, and it was done back in the 20s or 30s, I believe Kevin said. And then there were also a couple of totem poles there that I took a picture in front of one, and I don't think I've posted that on anywhere, so I'll put that one on the show notes page too. Again, like I said, I love taking selfies. I also love thinking about what people say when they see a guy with the white cane walking around with his phone out and doing selfies. As I mentioned before, the way that I find it easiest to do a selfie is to put the timer on and then listen very closely to my phone when it says, face at left side, face at right side, face at top edge. Because I try to line it up where my face is not in the middle and I have whatever I want also in the image off to one side or the other. Now, in the case of the totem pole that I was standing in front of, I wanted my face, at the bottom and then the totem pole above me. And I think I pretty much got that. Again, I'll put it up on the show notes page. You can have a look because like I said, I don't think I've added that to Instagram or Twitter. So I was wandering around and I had run into Kevin again, and he was explaining a few things to me, and I asked him where some of the other things were, and he said, well, if you go up these stairs and so forth and so on. So I did that, and I did have a little bit of trouble. They have a cafe there, and he said, if you get to the cafe, you just keep going, and then you go into the beginning of the exhibits. Well, I walked down the hallway and went past the cafe. I guess I went the wrong way past the cafe. There's two ways to get past the cafe. One is basically just like a narrow hallway that then leads to maybe a kitchen. I don't quite know what it was, but I knew I was not in the right spot. So I went back to the cafe. I made a right past where the tables are in the cafe, because the way the cafe is set up, on one side of this hallway is where you order your food, and then across the hallway there's a big wide open space with windows on both sides that have tables. Then past that is where the exhibits start. And I got in there and I thought, how am I going to know what I'm in front of and what I'm looking at? And so I brought out my phone and I have a shortcut on my phone. I just say, hey Siri, what does this say? And what it will do, it will open up Seeing AI. And if you've never used shortcuts on your iPhone, it is awesome. It's basically where you just say, hey Siri, and whatever you want to do. For example, I have one for my mom. I say, hey Siri, call mom home, and boom, it does it. And and I've got a few others set up. The biggest problem for me is phrasing it exactly how I typed it in. So sometimes I run into an issue when I try to open Seeing AI that way. But Seeing AI has always been, since I've downloaded it, has always been my go-to for reading just about anything. When I'm in my mailroom here in our apartments, I look around for packages that have our name on it. Now, since it's the holiday season, it's tough because there are so many packages in there that I'll either wait till the end of the day, hope that somebody's in the mailroom when I get down there, or ask Jacob when he is coming or going to pop in there and take a look. But walking around the museum, I just had my phone out with Seeing AI opened, and I was basically swiping back and forth with my cane so I didn't run into anyone or anything. And I just had my phone off to the side, pointed at what I knew or what I thought were different exhibits or different cases with things. And it worked out well. So if I were walking past something, if I walked past something that had some written blurb about what was in the case, it would start to read to me, and I would listen to it. I'd stop for a minute and listen to it to see what it said. If I thought it sounded very interesting and was fairly large, I would take a selfie in front of it. If it was just little artifacts, then, I just kept moving. I listened, I thought, that's interesting, and moved on. So the first gallery I went into was African, and that was fairly new, that gallery, that exhibit. And I went through that, and there were a couple of cool things. And I did take a selfie in front of some sort of carving that I guess is a figure of a person. I can't quite make it out even on my computer. So I don't think I've ever looked at it with any family member or friend. So I don't quite know what it is. And it is behind glass, and I always, there's always a little bit of a glare when you take an image, and maybe something's out of focus because it's behind glass. And the lighting is just okay. When I zoom in and I look at it on my computer, I seem, a little bit dimly lit. So, I'm not 100%. So I haven't shared that on social media, and I'm not going to put that up because I don't like the image that much. So I walked through there, and then I got to some other things. And along the way, the cool thing about the tactile days, along the way in each gallery, there is someone there to demonstrate or show you something. In the African one, there was a girl named Toby, and she was demonstrating and showing different, I guess, cotton. I forget what you call it, where you weave cotton into different fabrics. And she showed, mud cloth. There was examples of mud cloth that we could feel, and all sorts of different things. And it was very cool to do that. And because I was on my own and I was early, I had one-on-one time with Toby, and she really told me a lot about the different cloths and the different methods of taking the cotton. For the first time in my life, I believe, I felt cotton still on the branches with the leaves and everything else, which I thought was very cool. And she showed me the different, what they do to take it off and the different tools used. And again, it's all tactile, so I can feel it and not have to imagine what this looks like. I just I feel it, and I ask questions if I have them, and if not, she moves on to the next thing. And so I spent a few minutes with Toby, and she told me all those things, and then I moved on to the next gallery, which I want to say was Mesopotamia. I'm not 100% sure. I did take a picture in front of a giant tablet of something, and I never could find the little blurb about it, so I'm not quite sure what it was. But this gallery was a little bit more populated with visitors when I was going through, and they weren't part of the tactile day. These were just people visiting the museum. There weren't any other blind folks in there. And as I worked my way through that, I walked through some doors, and it seems like I made it to the new entrance to the museum, which I came in. I don't want to say I came in a side entrance, but I came in the entrance that I knew where it was when I had walked over there. And the one that I was told to go into by Trish from Philly Touch Tours. So this main entrance now has the Sphinx that was restored, that is in the museum. So I took a selfie with that, and I think that came out okay. And again, that one I believe I put on Instagram. If not, I know it's on my my Facebook page. So that's there, and that's just, I was surprised how big that was, because I kind of walked around that after I took the picture, after I realized what it was. And again, there was nothing there that talked about it that I could find. I mean, I'm sure there's something somewhere, but I walked around it looking for some information on it, and I couldn't find it. And I walked around the rest of that entryway, and there were some other things in there from all sorts of different places, Native American stuff, there was African stuff. I took a picture of a mask that, for some reason, is synonymous with the Penn Museum. I couldn't really make out what it looked like. I just know when I looked at the image, the background of the image was white, and this mask was, I think it's wood, so it's dark, but I'm guessing it's got facial features, but I couldn't tell. So I did that, and I walked along that case where all these things were, and it had the little, at the same level, it had all these little written blurbs that talked about how old they were, where they were found, how the museum obtained them, and it was just very interesting stuff. After I finished that case, I was looking around for some more things, and I couldn't find anything in that area. So I found some stairs, and I went up the stairs, and I was happy that I did, because it took me to the Egypt Gallery, which is very cool, and a lot of very old things there to have a look at and touch and check out. It was also in this Egypt Gallery that we had spent a lot of time back in, I want to say it was April or May, when Keystone Chapter folks got to do this tactile day, and it was just us. It wasn't other folks. Philly Touch Tour, while Trish was there and, again, had helped set it up, there were no other organizations there, blind organizations. It was just basically our chapter. So the folks that were there, it actually ended up only being three of us, Simon, Harriet, and myself. So we got a lot of great time to ask questions and feel different things. And the hieroglyphics, obviously it's very cool. It's similar to Braille. And not that I read Braille. Again, functionally illiterate, as I've been told by Harriet. So while I was walking around this gallery in the museum on my own that day, this most recent visit, I thought to myself that, wow, I am doing this on my own, and I'm actually enjoying it, because I can take as little or as much time in front of each thing as possible. And again, with the phone reading the stuff, to me, it's not perfect. Sometimes it will, if I cough or if I, just have a little twitch, it will start reading from the beginning again. And sometimes it will only read the first sentence or two, and it's because I don't have it aimed exactly right at the text. So, it's not perfect, but I have to tell you, I really enjoyed walking around this museum, because it was my time, as long or as short as I wanted to spend on each artifact or display or statue. I could take the pictures whenever I wanted, and I didn't feel bad, for making somebody wait or rushing someone along. Likewise, I wasn't, I didn't have to wait or be rushed along, because I was on my own. And so I wandered around that gallery for a bit, and at that point I realized, what time it was, and I texted Harriet, and she had told me that they were there, and she asked if I wanted to join her group, which was her sister and another Keystone Chapter member named Gerardo. And so the four of us went around the museum, and it was nice that Harriet's sister, Heather, was there, because, she's sighted, and she was able, when we were on our own, when we weren't in a gallery where there was a person to help, she was able to read the different things or tell us what we're looking or kind of say, hey, we have to go this way or that way. And we did other tables. The other tables were set up. We did some things with Native American stuff with corn and I have to have to tell you, after feeling all the different kinds of corn and seeing how you make corn meal and doing all that, I wanted corn that day, and corn has always been one of my favorites. So, I also thought of corn nuts because some of the kernels of these different types of corn were so huge. But we did that, and we did some other things in other, some Native American things. I put on a polar bear glove, which Kevin had talked about before everybody else had gotten there when Kevin and I were speaking with one another. And I thought, man, it fit perfectly. If they had the other glove, it would have been a great pair to have for the winter, because obviously the polar bears stay warm, and my hand felt pretty warm inside that polar bear glove. But it was just a great afternoon. And again, once everything wrapped up and we finished, I want to say it was around 3:30 that afternoon, and Harriet and her sister left, and Gerardo left. He went back on the bus, and I walked around the corner and got on the train. And the only hiccup there was I had never been to this station before, so they have these turnstiles that I thought that I couldn't get through without having a ticket first. So I had to use the machine to buy a ticket for the SEPTA Regional Rail, and fortunately there was someone there. It sounded like a girl probably in her 20s or 30s, can't say for sure, but she was able to help me, and I bought the ticket there. It turned out I don't think I needed to buy it there, and I could have just walked through the turnstile and gotten the ticket on the train, because there, I spent a little bit more doing it through the machine, but it's fine, and I did it, and now I know for next time. And I believe the turnstile worked because Jane and I had recently gone to a concert and got off at a different station that we had never been to. And we didn't have to buy the ticket at the machines. We just walked through the turnstile and bought the ticket on the train on the way home. And that was at the Temple University stop after we saw the Radio 104.5 Miller Lite Mystery Show, which was Of Monsters and Men. And it was a very good show. It was the first time I was at that venue. And I just like, being able to go either on my own, and Jane is not comfortable driving in the city. And let's face it, when she came home for Thanksgiving, she hadn't driven since early August. So we had gone a place or two while Liz had stayed home because it was Liz was sleeping. We ended up picking up Jacob from work, but I said, I'm a little concerned, Jane, driving with you after you haven't driven for a while. So it worked out okay, and it's just nice though being able to jump on the train and go places. And for the museum, just to wrap that up, I took the train home. Liz picked me up at the station, and we were good to go. Again, sometimes I take the train home, and if it's while Liz is working, I end up walking home. And again, not too big of a deal. I had a presentation the other day in Philadelphia, and I took the train home rather than wait for the bus because, as I've mentioned previously, the bus near our condo complex, there's not a traffic light or intersection very close. It's probably half a mile away, so I'd have to get off the bus and walk anyway. So might as well just walk the whole distance and not waste the time on the bus and worry about crossing the street. Again, because there's very, we're in the suburbs. There's, a couple of intersections that have traffic lights along the way, but for the most part, it's just an open road with a shopping center nearby and things like that. But it was a very enjoyable day at the museum, both when I was part of the group, but especially when I was on my own, because I often wondered how I would handle it and if it would be enjoyable, and it really was. And again, using the Seeing AI app, which is free to download. And it does more than just read short blurbs of text or whole documents. You can point it to someone and it will say, a 28-year-old person, blah, 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 wearing a this or looking like that or whatever. It also can read currency and It has a barcode scanner, so you can get information from products that way. It's just a great app, and I had read about it years ago as part of a video sunglasses that I when I was looking into that, and I thought, man, that is a cool app. And then when it became available in the Apple App Store, I immediately got it, especially since it was free. And again, it is a Microsoft product, and I know I constantly bash Microsoft, but man, this one is great. I mean, it is great. It is way better than KNFB Reader, which is collaboration with the National Federation of the Blind and another group, and that costs quite a bit of money. Although there's going to be a basic version of KNFB Reader on the NFB Newsline app that's right now in beta. But I love seeing AI, and during my presentation the other day in Center City, Philadelphia, I talked about that app and comparing it with KNFB Reader. But just walking around, and again, I couldn't necessarily see where there was a little written blurb, and I probably walked past some. I'm sure the Sphinx has something written somewhere about it. Maybe it was not actually attached to its display. I know about the Sphinx. I just don't know how old that one is, and so forth and so on. If I get a chance to go back to that museum with someone who is sighted, I will shoot a video and put that up on my YouTube channel, which again is youtube.com/DavidBenge, just like all my other social accounts, to show you how I actually did it. Because I think it's important if you have someone in your life, whether a friend or family member that can't see. I'm telling you, it was enjoyable to walk around this museum. And again, I didn't walk into anybody. Maybe had I run into someone, literally, and not just saying, "Hey, Joe, how you doing?" I mean, walking around and walking into someone, as I did walking down my hallway outside of our apartment a week or so ago, because sometimes around my apartment I don't take my white cane with me, and I just didn't see this person coming, and she was walking next to someone who was taller and bigger, so my eye focused, I saw him, but I just didn't see this, she was much smaller than this person, and I just didn't see her, and fortunately I didn't knock her over because she was older, and but walking around the museum, no trouble. And that was the bottom line, and very enjoyable. So that is episode 51. And again, I really appreciate you listening over this last year. If you've got any kind of feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, please let me know. iCantCUpodcast@gmail.com. You can also phone in your feedback, 646-926-6350. Also, you can ask me any questions that might be interesting for an upcoming episode. So again, 646-926-6350 if you want to be a part of an upcoming episode, or you just have some feedback for me and don't want to send it in an email because you can't get you can't get your complete and your general feeling in the text characters on the in the email. You just have to yell it at me or whatever. But again, I do appreciate listening. Rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. Everything, when you rate and review and subscribe, it obviously helps us grow. And that's what we're trying to do as we move forward into our second year of the iCantCU podcast. Again, I appreciate you listening today and over the last year. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you for listening to the iCantCU podcast. Follow David on Twitter. He is @DavidBenge.